Hello, BookTube. Well, we're finishing up yet another read-along on this channel. We're finishing up read-alongs left, right, and center this weekend because we're doing a bunch of them, 4, and they're all, in one way or another, ending this weekend. And the one that we're finishing up in this video really feels like a double or a triple ending because this is The Duke's Children by Anthony Trollope. And we are not only finishing this book, but with this book we are finishing the Palliser series, which we have read from the beginning. These politically tinged series of novels that Trollope wrote over the course of 2 decades that largely feature relatively the same cast of characters, either in the foreground or in the background, and largely centering on the Palliser family, the old Duke of Omnium, and then his nephew and heir Plantagenet Palliser, who becomes the new Duke of Omnium, his vivacious and utterly memorable wife, the Lady Glencora, and now in this book his children, his heir, Lord Silverbridge, and his 2 younger children, Lady Mary and Lord Gerald. Now, Lord Gerald in these chapters that we're reading today gets into some betting trouble, owes some money, but he's largely too young to be interesting. Silverbridge has, in the course of this novel, also been involved in betting trouble, and you lost an enormous amount of money. In both cases, the Duke pays and just assumes that hopes that his sons will grow out of this betting phase rather than become a pernicious habit. The Duke, of course, is obscenely wealthy. The amount of money that his sons lose in racetrack gambling doesn't inconvenience him in any way. What does inconvenience him is love. Because this novel starts in the most heartbreaking way possible, with the Duchess, Lady Glencora, dead. The Duke is alone. And never would you read anywhere in Victorian literature of anyone less fit to deal with his own children or the changing mores of the times than the Duke of Omnium. He's not able at all. And his disability to deal with this is tested right away on twofold. One, Lady Mary has fallen in love with a young man named Frank Tregear, who is upright and honorable and smart and handsome and well-spoken. Manly is the word that the Duke of Omnium uses, but he doesn't have a penny. And the Duke is outraged. His old world sensibilities are outraged by the fact that a man would even allow himself to pay suit to a young woman knowing that he is going to need her father's money in order to live. It looks like fortune hunting. Now, from the minute that the Duke first meets Frank Tregear in one of our earliest chapters, when we first started this book, he realizes right away what everyone else says about Frank Tregear and what the Duchess thought about Frank Tregear before she died, which is that he is absolutely not a fortune hunter. He is not thinking about Mary's money. He loves her. It's a shame to me that we don't see that. We don't see the beginnings of their courtship at all. We don't see how that fascination forms. We know that it did, but we don't see it. It's already formed when we meet these characters. So we just have to take it on faith, even though what we see of Lady Mary doesn't really show us anything that someone like Frank Tregear would fall head over heels and permanently in love with. One way or another, we can't suspect him of wanting money in the way that we could, for instance, suspect Ferdinand Lopez of wanting money, even though he claimed to love a girl. And the Duke, of course, refuses. He tells his daughter, no, it's not fitting, even though he's not a fortune hunter. It's not fitting that you should marry a man of no station, of no job, of no background. He refuses, and Lady Mary is a dutiful daughter and tells him, well, I'm your daughter, so I will obey you, but I will never love anyone else, I will never marry anyone else, and I will be miserable. And that makes the Duke miserable. He's not a tyrant. He just thinks he knows what's right, and rails against in his heart, he rails against the idea. Not only that Lady Mary would irretrievably love this man after he has turned his face against the idea, but also the clear implication that he gets from all quarters, which is that the match had his wife's support before she died. That feels like one last irresponsibility on his wife's part, and one that he can't correct because she's gone, and he misses her so much. But for the large chunk of the novel, that we follow that plot line, arid as it might seem to the 21st century, where he is steadfast, takes Lady Mary abroad, but has her obedience. She will not do it. She accidentally meets Frank Tregear once and quickly leaves. But other than that, she is willing to obey her father even if it ruins her own happiness. And the course of love is not going smoothly either with Silverbridge, who was, he thought, in love with a young woman named Mabel Grex, until he meets a wealthy and very vivacious and very beautiful American heiress, Isabel Boncassen. And once again, he had told his father something about Mabel Grex, and his father was grateful. Didn't really approve of Earl Grex, her father, but liked the fact that they were old nobility. In fact, in the chapters we're reading today, when Earl Grex dies, his obituaries all say the Grex family of Grex was the oldest that had any kind of documentation anywhere in England. That appeals to someone like the Duke of Omnium. He likes that match. So he's, of course, upset when Silverbridge finally works up the nerve to tell him that the match with Mabel Grex is not going to happen, that in fact a match is going to happen, but it's with an American who has no title in England, has no background, of course. Family is American. She's an alien, not just she's wealthy and she's vivacious and she's well-spoken, but in her own way, she's as bad as Frank Tregear. In both cases, the family is squandering what the Duke considers to be their duty. And he actually says that at one point. It's a little bit disconcerting on near page 400 to see this character still talking this way. But when Silverbridge brings it up and the Duke says, no, Silverbridge says, I thought you liked her. And the Duke says, liked her? I did like her. I do like her. What has that to do with it? Do you think that I like none but those whom I should think of fitting it myself to ally with marriage? Is there to be no duty in such matters? No restraint? No feeling of what is due to your own name and to others who bear it? The lad out there who's sweeping the walks may marry the first girl that pleases his eye if she will take him. Perhaps his lot in life is happier if he owns such liberty. Have you such freedom? And you read an expostulation like that and you realize that you've been reading the Duke say that sort of thing about how poor people are free to marry as they please, and maybe they're happier for it, with all of the ladled-on condescension that involves, that you've been reading stuff like that for hundreds of pages. It gets a little bit wearying. It gets a little bit wearying. And the same thing is true with Lady Mary. And he, a couple of pages later, he's still going at it, this time in his own head. It may be conceived, therefore, that he was again unhappy. He had already been driven to acknowledge that these children of his, thoughtless, restless though they may seem, still had a will of their own, in all which how like they were to their mother. With her, however, his word, though it might be resisted, had never lost its authority. When he had declared that a thing should not be done, she had never persisted in saying that she would do it. Shows how well he remembers the books we've read. But with his children it was otherwise. What power had he over Silverbridge, or for that matter even over his own daughter? They had only to be firm, and he knew that he must be conquered. Now we have been told that by other characters, Lady Cantrip, Mrs. Finn. We've been told that from the beginning. We've been told that for hundreds and hundreds of pages now, that if they are firm, he will give in. He will yield. He's not a tyrant. He can't not do it. It would be out of character. And sure enough, in the pages that we're reading today, that is what happens. This final quarter of the Duke's Children is as good an example as any that I could come up with for a hallmark of Trollope novels, which is the incredibly long anticlimax. Now, things happen in these chapters. Mainly, Frank Tregear is injured in a fox hunting incident, because you have to have a fox hunting scene in a Trollope novel. But that's mainly dressing. And also the incredible tragic fate of Lady Mab, of Mabel Grex, is also detailed here. In the final conversation scene that she has with Silverbridge is heartbreaking in its frankness. She has lost everything. She loses her father. We are given exact figures of how poor she is. And she's lost Frank Tregear, too, who was also once a paramour of hers. She has nobody. And feels ill-used and, quietly, self-sacrificingly noble. It's a horrible, bitter ending for a character that we're not supposed to hate. But aside from those window dressings, this last quarter of the book is just the Duke of Omnium inevitably yielding to both his children. And I'm wondering what you thought of that, now that we're at the end of this book. If you followed along, if you've read all the Palliser novels from the beginning with me, then maybe you're accustomed to this already. Maybe, in fact, like me, you love it. You come to love long, slow Trollope endings. The long, slow twilight of a Trollope novel is an art form on its own. Not everybody can do it and keep the reader reading, and Trollope does it fantastically. And I'm wondering if you agree with that, or if you would have rather had more happen here, because gradually the Duke does yield. Gradually, he does. First to his son and then to his daughter. And at the end, when he's having a conversation with Frank Tregear, he takes him aside and says, no doubt we must talk about money. Talk to my man of affairs, my businessman, and he will tell you what I propose. I'm hoping that you'll feel comfortable. And if the Duke of Omnium is saying that, you know that it will be an extremely ample living. And Frank Tregear is, he's been in Parliament. A career can be opened up to him by having a fortune. And just like that, in one sentence, just like that, in one line, the whole of the problem that animated the beginning of the book is solved. Without any trouble at all. The Duke comes to it. He's led to it gradually by stages, and when it happens, he doesn't ruin his daughter. He doesn't ruin his son-in-law. He does it without any trouble at all. Same thing with the American girl. He objects. He says that he tells his son, you're marrying against my wishes, against my advice. But when it comes time to it, he loves Isabel Boncassen easily. And for the first time in the whole of the book, we see him laughing. We see him as close to carefree as Plantagenet Palliser can be. And there's a certain amount of gratification in that, even though his long cares throughout the book were all his own doing. So that ends The Duke's Children and the Palliser novels for us. And of course, as usual with these read-alongs, I'm wondering what you think. We're now at the end. So we're done with Trollope for now. I'm thinking that August is already going to include a number of read-alongs, so I'm thinking we'll give Trollope a break until maybe the fall, which is unfortunately right around the corner. So next month we will not be reading Trollope. So I hope if you were introduced to him by these read-alongs and you have stuck with him through these read-alongs, I'm hoping that you've become addicted to him. He is an extremely addictive author. Once you get him, you want to read Trollope for the rest of your life. I certainly do. And I'm now rereading all of his books many times over. And I still go back to them because they are so comforting. They are so wonderfully enjoyable. And I'm wondering if you felt that way about this. So let me know. Tell me all, as usual. So that ends our read-along of The Duke's Children and of the Palliser novels. We did it. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, Book 2.